What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another video. This is another book review. I'm for the first Thrawn book now. I said it at the beginning when I did the second book review that I would come back and re-listen to this one so that I could review it, so that I would have it, and then I would be able to dive into the prequel books, which I have started the first prequel book. I'm a couple hours in, but I finished this the other day, listening to it for the second time, and yeah, absolutely slapped. Slight spoiler warning, I'm not going to get into too many plot details, but we'll be talking about some stuff. So this book follows Thrawn as he is invited into, well, he kind of breaks his way into the Empire a little bit, but then is also invited into the ranks of the Imperial Navy. And this book kind of follows his trajectory, his climb through the ranks to that coveted Grand Admiral title. That's not a spoiler. We know that Thrawn becomes a Grand Admiral. And so this book is him going from castaway, exiled on a planet, to Grand Admiral Thrawn. And so you get that full journey here. And it's amazing. This book, yeah, I absolutely love it. I loved it the first time I listened to it. I still love it now. It's, again, written by Timothy Zahn, narrated by Mark Thompson. And as with all the Star Wars books, of course, production quality, top tier, music, sound effects, all that good stuff. And yeah, I love, this might be, I don't know if this is my favorite in the trilogy or not. It's tough. I'm going to have to re-listen to the other two again now. But there's just something about that, like, Thrawn going against all the odds and like people constantly doubting him. And that's one thing, I'll get into that, this talking point now. One of my favorite things about this book and this trilogy, and really Star Wars books in general, is that you really get into more of the politics of Star Wars, which is something that I've enjoyed more and more the older that I've gotten and the more Star Wars that I've consumed, because I think the political climate and the political machinations in the world of Star Wars is super, super interesting. And so you have, generally in the galaxy, humans are the top species. And so, especially in the core worlds, a lot of non-humans, so any aliens, are very much discriminated against and side-eyed and, shunned to an extent, depending on where you're at. And then that also, those prejudices also do apply to anyone from not the core world. So you go the mid-rim and then the outer rim. And so if you're from the outer rim, you're especially like, there's a ton more prejudice against you. And so Thrawn is both. He's an alien from the outer rim, and so he's already got a big uphill battle ahead of him. And so this book does a really good job of exploring that. And then you also get a lot of that because a lot of the book is from Eli Vanto's perspective. Well, you spend a lot of time with Eli Vanto, who is basically Thrawn's aide and translator throughout the book. He's a lot more than that, but that's his general title. He's a lieutenant, or he's an ensign for most of the book. And so the back and forth between them two is super great, because you have Eli, who's very, not necessarily skeptical, but doesn't really, he's on Thrawn's side, but he's like very unsure of a lot of things that he's doing at the same time. And so their dynamic is really cool. And Thrawn sees a lot of potential in Eli and is kind of training him. And like, you, the audience member, the reader or listener, are able to work through how Thrawn thinks more, because we're doing it with Eli. Eli is our window into Thrawn, basically, and Eli's like, how is he thinking like this? And Thrawn kind of walks Eli through these different steps, and Eli gets to how Thrawn is thinking, and thus in turn we get to how Thrawn is thinking and start thinking more like Thrawn as the book goes on. And that's a really cool thing the book does. And so not only do you have that character dynamic and that little insight, which is super cool, but then, as I was saying, you have the political element to it, which is the general galactic political side of things against Thrawn. But then you also have the political machinations of the Imperial Navy. And okay, so this is something that's going to sound very odd. I meant to say this in my treason review. I love the Empire, not in a like I want the Empire to rule the galaxy type thing, but I think the way the Empire works, the structure of it, the establishment of it, and like how things are run, and like just how it ticks, is super fascinating to me. And these books explore that a lot, and I really like seeing that and kind of seeing how things are run, how characters have to interact, and just all of that kind of stuff. And I think that this book elaborates on all of that and highlights all of that really well. Again, it has a really, really great supporting cast of characters. You have a Brenda Price, who is from Lothal, and so Lothal is very much tied into Thrawn in his reintroduction into canon. If you've seen Rebels, you of course know that. I actually am going to have to go and fact check. I probably should have done that before recording this, but I can't remember if Arinda Price was in Rebels because I hadn't read these books whenever I watched it the first time. But I have to assume that she is to an extent, or at least mentioned, because of her Lothal ties. But so she's a fantastic character too. You get the Imperial Security Bureau. You have Colonel Yularen, who is a very pivotal character in the book and like works closely with Thrawn. But then on top of that, so you have all of these things, the smelting pot. But one of the bigger overarching things that kind of gets introduced like almost halfway into the book, which is crazy. But it's like this opponent for Thrawn. You have Night Swan, who is this tactical, not equal, but he's very much an adversary for Thrawn throughout the book, and in what he's doing in the galaxy and the schemes that he's playing and plotting out. And so you have Thrawn trying to thwart him, and that back and forth is fantastic. And the way that that mystery is unraveled and then used to propel the narrative in different situations, and then also how it's used to bring Thrawn and Eli, and by extent the rest of the Empire and whatever ship they're currently on, into these different predicaments and these different battles and these different circumstances that Thrawn then has to figure out and try to win, is super, super interesting. It's very well done. It's all woven together very organically, and it's done in a very entertaining way throughout. I think like naval battles are one of my favorite things in Star Wars now. Like I love the tactical like commander versus commander, like how the troops and how everything is maneuvered, and Thrawn of course always being how many steps ahead and very much thinking things through. It's just always super, super cool to see, and this one especially was very nice. Being my second read through, I of course knew the outcome of a lot of things, and so being able to pick up on things more so this time was really nice. Yeah, it's just a fantastic like introduction to Thrawn. If you've never seen him or read him in anything, he's a absolutely phenomenal character. He's become my second favorite Star Wars character. These books obviously being the main reason why. And this book is a fantastic starting off point. It does everything that it sets out to do in spades. It's completely compelling from cover to cover. And yeah, I cannot recommend it enough. It's a fantastic read. And I guess that just about wraps it up for this video. It's kind of short and sweet. Because I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of everything, but like yeah, the political intrigue, the way the Empire works, Thrawn rising through the ranks, his rivalry with Night Swan, a fantastic supporting cast of characters that have their own narratives that all end up weaving together very well into the end of this book. The little bit of interactions that you get with Thrawn and Emperor Palpatine are super cool. Also, the hints of the Death Star and it being built, and like us, of course, knowing what it is super cool to see the foundations for that being laid. And then also Thrawn's feeling of fear in regards to the Grisk, which I've talked about in my previous Thrawn book reviews, those kind of seeds being planted. Also, the seeds being planted even for the second book, where Thrawn mentions that he has met General Skywalker before in this book. And of course, we get that story in the sequel. So that's really cool. But yeah, just overall, really love this book. Highly recommend. And yeah, I guess that just about wraps this up. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like down below. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing and turning that notification bell on. Make sure to follow me on Twitter. My personal is at APBatman with 2 T's. You can also find me at Batman Files, which is my Batman Twitter account, obviously. And yeah, thank you again for watching, and be sure to tune into the next one. Later.